All right, welcome to the Business of Sports Tourism podcast. We're doing a one-off today. Ben Snyder with Grand Junction, Colorado, and I'm joined by three-time Olympian, gold medalist in Rio, BMX rider of our generation, maybe the best ever to do it, Connor Fields. I can also attest he's a good dude. We had a great time in Grand Junction when he visited and spoke to the CMU cycling team. But Connor, thanks for joining me, and excited to hear what's going on in your world.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you about Grand Junction, sports, BMX, and everything else.
That's right. So yeah, let's kick it off. Like we are leading up to Paris Games starting this week. We've got a lot of buzz around the community, and then on top of that, which is a very few times it's happened, Salt Lake was just awarded the 2034 Winter Games. And so I think the Olympic buzz is just magnified right now. But talk a little bit about, so you raced in London, you raced in Rio, you raced in Tokyo. You've been in the sport for over 20 years. Just talk a little bit about your path from getting from amateur rider, dream, I think writing on the wall to getting onto the on the course and Olympic field.
Yeah, I mean, thinking back, like when I started racing, BMX was not in the Olympics. There was no long-term plan or goal. I was just a kid who liked to do it, and I played other sports, but it just came to the point where I was asking my parents just to go ride. I want to go ride. I don't want to go to the baseball game, or I don't want to go to the football game. I just want to go ride. And so there wasn't really a plan. It just I got lucky, I guess, that BMX was added to the Olympics in Beijing 2008 when I was 15. I watched it and I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I decided right then and there that I was going to take it seriously and try to go to the Olympics. And then at that point, I started training. I started fully dedicating myself to it. And, I was already competing nationally at 15. It wasn't like I was just hanging out. But I was able to make rapid improvements and make the London Olympics in 2012.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I think the funny thing is that most of people in sports tourism are washed up retired athletes that only have dreams of kind of experiencing what you have. I mean, I think there's so many aspects that we're aware of with the Olympics, from the Olympic Village to the flag bearers and walking that opening ceremonies. What are some of what is some of the memories, especially London, that first time that you got to go? What really stood out? Like, what was, man, this is what I was dreaming of.
I think, when you show up and you get off the plane and you get in a bus, and then you go to like the Team USA welcome area, house, welcome center, whatever you call it. And they walk you in, and then they start fitting you for all these outfits, and you get the opening ceremonies outfit, and you're seeing yourself in that opening ceremonies outfit. And you've got stylists and tailors measuring it to your body. And then from there, you go and you get a suitcase full of Nike gear and a suitcase full of Ralph Lauren gear. And then you get a watch and, all Olympic ring, and you get like all the gear. And then, right after you land in London, you're geared out, you're swagged out, you have all the stuff, and you're like, I'm an Olympic athlete now. I can wear this. And that's a pretty cool piece. The other things that stick out is, sitting in the cafeteria and eating and seeing athletes from all over the world is really, really great. I always said it's the best people watching in the world, because you're sitting there and, you can see everything from a gymnast to a marathon runner to a weightlifter to an NBA basketball player. Like, just the body shapes and sizes are so different, and the countries and the outfits, and it's the best people watching. And then the biggest moment that sticks out to me is walking in the closing ceremonies. Was an amazing experience. And I did not get to do the opening ceremonies because our event was the very last day. So we didn't show up until it was time to compete. We didn't want to sit there for 2 weeks, unable to train or practice. But walking in the closing ceremonies was incredible as well.
That's awesome. And so, like I said, you did, London was the first experience. Obviously dialed in Rio, came away with the gold medal, and I'm sure that is a memory that will live on forever. And then Tokyo, obviously, COVID was its own beast and changed the experience altogether. And I know we won't go into it too much because and we'll talk about this later too in terms of the speaking engagements that you do. But you had an unbelievable story about what happened in Tokyo and the crazy injury and kind of the road back on that. But I guess just the experiences, and we're trying to tie this into this kind of sports tourism side. Every country obviously gets to host it the way they do. You got London, you got Rio and Tokyo. What are some of the things that stood out between the different hosts that you took away of, man, this London did this really well, or Rio went above and beyond, or Tokyo was dialed in kind of thing?
I had three very different experiences at the Olympics because I was in the window that I was in. I got to compete in three different continents.
Yeah.
So South America, that was the first time when it was in Brazil. That was the first time that South America hosted the Olympics. Whereas London, it was the third time that that city had hosted the Olympics, right? And then Tokyo was the COVID games. So
Yeah.
I had a very wide variety of experiences. I think all of them did some things great. All of them could have maybe improved on some stuff. I think back to London, and it was very organized. I felt very sure of when everything was going to happen, where it was, how it was laid out. Like, it was the organization, I remember, was very very well done. Whereas in Rio, I didn't feel quite that way, but the passion and the enthusiasm of everybody there and the locals and the staff was contagious.
Yeah.
It felt like I was in Carnival. Like
Yeah.
it just felt amazing when you were there. And then Tokyo, it's hard for me to judge because of the situation that we were in. But I believe that had it been a normal games, Tokyo would have been unbelievable. I mean, the facilities there really is what I can remember was so incredible. Like, every single facility, from the cafeteria to the gym to the dorm rooms to the track and facility we raced on, was just next level, clean, organized, you know, freshly built. Like, it was all
Yeah.
so nice. But it was a weird time because nobody was there. Nobody was having fun. We were all avoiding each other, wearing masks. Like you said, it was hard to kind of
Yeah.
get a true experience.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, obviously, just hearing behind the scenes, like some of the economics behind that. I mean, I think it cost them like $6 to $10 billion more than anticipated, just because of having to build venues and not be able to. I mean, like, I think the Athlete Village was sold as private condos, but they had to wait on a year, and I'm sure that cost them a lot, all that stuff. Kind of talking into what are you doing now with your career? You obviously were extremely successful on the course. And now I know you mentioned that you're announcing for the Paris Games. You're doing a lot of speaking engagements. What does kind of the life of a gold medalist look like post competing?
Yeah, well, I always tell people I didn't have to decide what I wanted to do at 20. I got to delay it by 10 years. So I had to figure it out at 30. But I do a number of different things now. Like you mentioned, I do some public speaking, some keynote speaking. I actually did some at Colorado Mesa University last year. I'm going to be commentating for NBC for 2 events in Paris, which will be unbelievable. I get to share my love of BMX with the whole country. I'm still very involved with BMX, whether it's coaching athletes, or I'm actually the official ambassador of USA BMX, and I handle all media and a lot of strategy behind the scenes for what their plans are. And then I host a TV show as well called Outdoor Nevada, where we go all over my state and highlight all the amazing things it has to offer: landmarks, hiking, biking, fishing, all that kind of stuff. And look, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think Nevada had much. I'd been here my whole life, but I was blown away with just how much cool stuff Nevada has in it.
That's awesome. And I know, touching on the public speaking and keynote speeches. I mean, you came to Colorado Mesa. That's how we connected. And again, phenomenal job. We were fortunate enough to have one of the strongest cycling programs in the country, but I know everyone was just floored by getting able to hear you. And then I don't know if it's a direct correlation. I would just want to say one of those riders is now in the Olympics. And so if you listen to Connor Field, you have a good shot getting to the Olympics. I don't want to throw that out there too much.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where, look, I guess legally I can't guarantee that, right? I can't say, book me to come speak for your team and you'll be in the Olympics. I can't say that. But what I can say is that when that's your goal and that's something you're working towards, every little bit can help and can push you. And so for that athlete, they obviously had it in the back of their mind that they wanted to go to the Olympics one day.
Sure.
And hearing something like that, could just be another source of inspiration. It could get them to push a little bit harder the next training block or whatever it is. And you just never know where those little things are that you're going to be able to gain motivation from.
Sure. And again, I mean, I don't want to spoil this story of kind of what you shared in your speech, but it was truly incredible. And so again, if anyone's listening that is looking for a keynote speaker, I can personally attest Connor Fields is your man. ConnorFields.com, correct, is where they can go to kind of sign up, all that.
Yep.
ConnorFields.com. You touched a little bit on kind of your involvement with BMX, and that's something I wanted to touch on too. And again, all the world's come together. John David, former director of the USA BMX, is now the leads our sports tourism industry, head of the sports ETA. And so there's obviously a synergy right there, but the growth of BMX over the last 2 decades probably has been astronomical. You said Beijing was the first year was in the Olympics. You competed in the next 3 cycles. Your involvement in the sport, how has sports tourism really embraced BMX? And again, do you think there's a huge impact on the number of riders coming out of having Olympic sport?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways to tackle this. There's so many different ways to get into it, right? I mean, like starting off with the sport, I think having a clear and defined pathway in the sport is very helpful. It's the Olympics, but it's also there's collegiate scholarships like Colorado Mesa University, and there's a number of other schools around the country where you can get college scholarships. Or if you don't want to attend one of those schools, USA BMX offers the Bob Warnicki Scholarship, where they will contribute direct funds to BMXers that are going to school. So I received the Bob Warnicki Scholarship as I attended the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. But all of those types of opportunities weren't around when I was coming up, when I was a kid. So a lot of parents these days, and understandably so, take that into consideration when they figure out what sport their kid is going to be pursuing, right? Can they go to college for this? Is there a pathway for this? Is there potential for this to turn into something that is going to have value in the end?
Sure.
And, I do think it's important, a side note as a parent, I do think it is important to find that balance, because if a child's passion happens to be darts, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what they love more than anything. You can't say you can't do your passion because there's no college scholarships. Like, I don't know if that's the right answer, but
Sure.
Of course it's helpful when people learn that there is a pathway within the sport. And then from there, I think the numbers and the participation has grown.
Yep.
And therefore the value of bringing a BMX race to a city has grown. Right. I mean, I've done races before. I think the first one I was a teenager, but I've done a number of races before in Grand Junction, as well as all over the country. And I see there's like this moving, I don't know if you want to call it a circus, but it's like a moving circus that comes into town, and there's, a few thousand families, and they all need a place to stay. And so they're booking hotels, and they're filling up their gas tank, and they're going to the restaurants and the grocery store and shopping and whatever the local tourist attraction is when they're on their off day there. And it makes perfect sense, because you could bring an event there, and then the event is going to bring a large number of people. And just to see certain cities around the country have definitely embraced it and become staple stops annually on the tour. And being able to see the synergy between USA BMX and the BMX community and that city working together to help each other out has been cool.
Yeah, and again, I think again, we were chatting before this, like not just the economic impact from that event, but then you have kind of the continuing people coming back to visit. Hey, I liked the landscape there. There's great places to camp, etc. But also, I think one of the biggest things is kind of that, especially in today's world with social media, is the media reach. I mean, we host a number of events and we produce ourselves, and sometimes it's just inviting some of these pros with huge social media followings to be able to say, "Hey, I'm in Grand Junction, I'm in Las Vegas, I'm here." That media piece is almost equally as impactful for economies, and I'm sure you've really seen that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the whole business of social media influencing,
Yeah,
right? And I've done some of it. I've got 100,000 followers on social media, so I've done paid posts as well.
yeah,
And it's no different than the Super Bowl commercial or a
yeah,
TV commercial. You say, hey, these are the number of people that are going to see it. This is the cost to get that many eyeballs on whatever said product is. Um, and then from there, if you do have an event, you're bringing, 8,000 or 8,000 people, and of the 8,000, 4,000 of them might have Instagram.
sure,
And they're what's called a micro influencer if they have a small number of followers, a few hundred as friends and family. But if you think of the numbers, if you've got, 3,000 people that throw on an Instagram to 500 followers,
yeah.
you're reaching a large number of people.
Yeah, and that's I mean, again, it's so cool to see that full circle of someone that's an athlete that's worked through the system, going to the highest level, succeeded at the highest level, and is now coming back to kind of support that sports tourism. So really appreciate those insights. Talking a little bit about going back to kind of the Olympic Games, that's obviously at the upper echelon of kind of what we do in sports tourism. There's few number of cities that can do that, and um, I think over the last handful of years, I mean, you've heard the horror stories of, I think Montreal hosted the games in '76, but didn't pay them off until like 2002. Rio built all these great stadiums and now aren't really being utilized. So you look at LA 2028 doing something kind of brand new. I know Beijing built everything, Bird's Nest, all this stuff. LA is using almost all existing venues with a handful of a couple minor developments, but I mean, have you seen the Olympic game hosts like purview kind of switch with, hey, we're trying to monetize, we're trying to make this event not be a 30-year payment kind of
Yeah.
thing?
No, I guess the one of the first experiences that I had dealing with games infrastructure was actually before I even went to the games. I was doing a training camp in Sydney, Australia, and I took the subway. That it wasn't the subway, the tram. I'm American. We don't have a public train system, so I don't know what we call it. But they had like a system that would kind of sprawl out around the city, and then it all kind of hubbed at the city center. And so from
Yeah,
where I was staying in the suburbs, I jumped on this tram and took it into the city. But as I walked onto the tram, there was a big sign that said, "This is the legacy of Sydney 2000 Olympic Games,"
mhm,
because they completely rebuilt their transportation system for access to the different venues in the area.
yeah,
And so that was my first experience. But I think there's a lot of negative press, I guess, and I'm
sure,
not saying that the negative press shouldn't be shared, but negative press is going to be what gets the clicks.
yeah,
Somebody says, "Oh, London 2012, they repaved 50 miles of roads within London, in preparation for the games." But when the games are done, the locals get that 50 miles of freshly paved road, right?
sure.
And I guess there it would be kilometers because it's England. But
There you go.
they don't talk about a lot of that stuff. They do rightfully so talk about in Rio a lot of the facilities were built and abandoned. The BMX track was built and abandoned.
Was it?
In Beijing it was as well. But in London, the BMX track was built for the games, and then when the games were done, it was downsized into a regular kid-sized BMX track, and it still operates today as a BMX club for kids in London.
Yeah,
And that's a legacy story that isn't shared, that should be, because there's a lot of kids now that are practicing on the old Olympic track.
yeah,
It's not the exact same, it's been downsized, but it's there. But with that being said, I think what LA is doing is fantastic. We are at the point, I guess, as a society now where there are 15, 20 cities around the world that have all the existing infrastructure. And
yeah,
maybe all they need to do is build 10, 15% new stuff. And then maybe they could just use this as an opportunity to refresh and refurbish some of their current infrastructure rather than build all new infrastructure. And I think that's how it should be moving forward for a number of reasons. One, to to save the budgets and not let these cities completely, go under to host the games. But also just as a citizen of the city, if I was a citizen of Los Angeles and I was driving every day on a road with potholes into an old city building that was decrepit, and then I'm watching right next door them building this brand new, unbelievable track and field facility for one event. I'm like, this doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I think the idea of refurbishing and using existing infrastructure is great, and it's definitely going to make the games more sustainable. And looking ahead, LA, and then Brisbane, Australia is the next one after that. These are all mega, full on world cities that have all the existing infrastructure that they need. Might only just need to build a couple of specific,
sure.
things like the BMX track, but Brisbane has one, so we're good, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, you talk about the sports tourism industry, like there's been a lot of evolution over the last 20, 30 years of understanding the impact, the legacy piece of it. Like you said, there's beyond that too, there's just so much intrinsic value of having, I mean, the citizens of Brazil were able to say, this was our event. We put this on. We had all the best athletes in the world coming here. So touching base real quick on Salt Lake. Excited for the U.S. to be able to host this in 2034. Obviously, really, I know there was a lot of internal discussion because I think they were up for, there was discussion, did they want to do 2030 and have it LA 2028, Salt Lake 2030, and ultimately decided on LA or Salt Lake 2034. Coming back to a host, obviously LA hosted in 84, so they're coming back as well, but Salt Lake's hosted in 2034 back in 2002 as well. What, I don't know, do you have any, has there been any discussions or have you heard anything about what Salt Lake might be trying to do to stand out from the rest? Put together their plan?
I haven't heard anything specifically, but I'm sure they're going to do a great job. I do think that it was wise to do the 2034 and not do it 2 years after. A lot of people don't understand because why would they? They're not in it. But the week that this Olympics this summer is over, so as soon as Paris is done, all the staff of the U.S. Olympic team is going to take about a week off and then immediately begin preparations for 2026 Winter Games. And it's this never-ending cycle, and it's 18 to 24 months where you're prepping for games, and then there's the games, and then boom, you're immediately on to the next games. Even the sponsors. One of my sponsors was Ralph Lauren, and we would do 18-month contracts, and our contract would be 18 months in the lead up to the games and a couple months post games for all the media. And then as soon as our contract was done, they were on to the next games, which is the Winter Games. And so there's this constant flow of rolling it forward to the next games. And if you were going from LA and then immediately into Salt Lake City, that would be overwhelming for the American staff and everybody preparing, because there is additional work and preparation that has to be done when it's a home games. So I think that makes sense to give them a little bit of that break. But I'm sure Salt Lake will do a great job. I mean, they have existing infrastructure at the moment, but there's been so much growth within that city in the past 10 to 15 years that I'm sure that they're going to hopefully use this as a chance to build out some new infrastructure. They're going to use it as a chance to refurbish some existing stuff and, use plenty of facilities they already have up there because they already have some of the best mountains in the world.
Yep.
I'm going to be careful saying that to somebody from Colorado, but they do have some of the best mountains in the world.
No, we accept that. They're good partners, and yeah, I know a lot of people in sports tourism world in Utah, and it's super exciting for them. And you're right. I think the staffing, I got to do some work with head of Tokyo and understood that timeline. Like you said, it's once the Olympics and Paralympics are done, it's flip the page onto the Winter Games. But yeah, I think the sponsorship piece is huge as well. Even Visa and McDonald's and all these huge organizations, that's a big budget for them to do Olympic Games. So I know there's a lot of athletes that cross over from summer to Winter Games. Are we going to see you on the snowboard or skis at all, or you hanging it up?
Only for fun. I always like to say that I got all my competitive juice out. I did 12 years as a professional at the highest level.
Yeah.
I am so uncompetitive now. I'll play board games with family, and I care the least out of everybody, and everybody's surprised because they're like, "You should be competitive." I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just hanging out."
See, that's the, yeah, I mean, you get the reverse. Like I never won, so I'm super competitive now. You won at the highest level, so you're like, I
Yeah,
did what I need to. So
yeah. You can beat me at Monopoly. I mean, I did a snowboarding trip actually not far from you last year. I went and I rode at Keystone, I rode at Brighton, and I rode at Copper.
yeah,
Not many mountains in Las Vegas, so I got to travel for that.
fair. Well, cool. Well, I want to wrap this up. What are you most looking forward to Paris? You want to call any shots, any underdog stories from the US that you see coming? What are you most looking forward to?
I mean, me personally, this will be the first games that I'm not a part of. So I'll get to watch and enjoy for the first time ever. Like, I'll be able to do the traditional experience of sitting on the couch and turning the Olympics on and just watching sports that you don't typically watch, which is always my favorite part. I don't typically watch track and field or swimming, but when the Olympics is on, I am a hardcore track and field fan and swimming fan, and I might be just going nuts over a ping pong game or, whatever it is, right? Like that's part of
Yeah.
the fun is you get to watch a lot of different sports. But as far as the BMX stuff goes, I've got this very unique perspective now because I've been working as I'm a commentator, but also as a reporter for NBC. I've been on the phone with a lot of the athletes, a lot of the coaches in preparation, doing a lot of research of what's to possibly come. And so I've got this unique perspective. And, on the freestyle side, the women's competition is going to be the best women's BMX competition in history. There are 3 to 5 women who have tricks that they've been working on that have never been done before and that they've been hush hush quiet about, and they're about to unleash it at the Olympics, which will be awesome. On the men's side, there's 4 to 5 men that you could make an argument for why they are going to win. So we're about to watch what's going to look like a video game competition. You're gonna. I mean, I've got to call it, and I'm trying to figure out what these tricks are because they're so insane. And then on the racing side, I'm biased, but I think it's the most exciting sport in the games. Everybody in the starting line is a chance. Anything can happen, and I'm really excited to watch the results unfold. And I think in all 4 medal events, men's and women's, race and freestyle, Team USA has a chance to medal in every single one. So I think it's going to be some exciting stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Connor, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, go to connorfields.com if you want to engage and kind of reach out about Connor coming to speak. I highly recommend it. He gave a great story, a lot of his experiences at the highs and lows, peaks and valleys. I mean, he's been through it all. So, Connor, thank you so much. 3-time Olympian, Olympic gold medalist, Connor Fields. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.